Hello, everybody. Good morning, as always. Ooh, looks like we've already got some people commenting. That's always fun to see. All right, from South Africa. Hey, all right. Welcome to the stream. Hey, Keith. Today we're talking about AHM version 1.5, as I'm sure you're all very excited to see. We'll just go ahead. Let's toss that slide up real fast, just as a fresh reminder for anybody joining. This is what we're talking about. I'll keep me little and tiny in the corner here, and we'll do something fun with the camera in a second. But again, we're talking version 1.5, so we'll let everybody kind of catch up. Yes, hello from Thailand. Yeah, I actually I need to start doing this. I've been doing this on my live AHM certification classes online, which you guys should always be signing up for, checking out if you want to learn more and get certified with AHM. But like to begin by saying, hey, drop in the chat, say hello, where you're from. I love to see where people are logging in from. So do not be shy. And while I'm doing this, Alex Skinner, Mr. Alex Skinner is behind the scenes, so always helping me out, being a fantastic friend and colleague. I would like to ask you to please grab the 1.5 link from the website for me, and we'll drop that in. We'll be able to chat away, make sure everybody can go download it, update it if they have it already. But otherwise, okay, New Hampshire, got it. Okay, so far we've got 3 different countries on 3 different continents. So we'll see if we can get that higher. Without further ado, though, because we have a lot to dig into, I'm gonna go for it. So there we go. Just dropped in. If you want to download System Manager, which is also the firmware for AHM, we just dropped the link in the chat. Go get it. Check it out. It's going to be really fun to play around with. I'm ecstatic. I know if any of you have ever talked to me, I'm pretty much excited about this stuff all the time. But this firmware update was a lot of work. I really want to just say the team did. In fact, I'm even Alex, take away the slide for me for a second. I want to make sure that I give a proper thank you to our R&D team and our development team. They did such a sensational job. I love working with them. They've taken some of our initial ideas and really built them into something special and significant. So big, huge shout out to them. They deserve heaps of credit. So okay. All right. I'm sure they hate attention, so I will prevent any more of that from happening. So we can go back to back to the slide here, and we'll start diving in. Okay. So let me, because goodness knows I don't have enough windows open. So let me go over to my PowerPoint here. We'll go right there. We'll go here. All right. Let me pop over to Chrome here, and I'm going to make myself tiny. So tinier than I already am. So we're going to disable this, and then I'm going to go here and do my overlay, and I'm going to hide myself in the corner. Yay, I'm floating. I just discovered I could move this window, so it's, we have fun here. Okay, so let's pop that off, back on. There you go. If I play with it too much, there we are. All right, 1.5. So if you haven't already played with this, there is a significant amount packed in here. I see the request coming in for the link on LinkedIn. Funny. We'll make sure we drop that in. But with 1.5, if you have an AHM, you have access to it, which is great. So if you bought your AHM 3 years ago, 4 years ago, maybe you were the first ones to open up an AHM box, you get the firmware and all the firmware that we make in perpetuity. So really get to enjoy all these new processes. So let's kind of just dive in. I see, wow, okay, people are commenting a lot. I'm gonna try to keep up here. All right. Oh, nice. Hi, Scott. Hey, Scott, how are you doing? So we'll start with just to kind of give you a gloss over of some of the stuff that we're going to be hitting on. And let me click on this. The NTP, we'll hit that. We'll talk about EQ ganging and the EQ improvements that we added. We'll talk about PA processing additions, the IP controller functions, as well as the system manager additions as well. And I'm going to, as much as I do love this video background, and some of you may have seen it on our social media, but just to kind of give you a little sneak preview here. I'm going to go to the next slide, and then it's going to be less exciting of a background because then I get to bring up System Manager This is the good stuff. Yeah. So I'll keep this kind of open as I typically do. And I'll move my little head. Let's move it over here. There we go. So network time protocol. So this is a big one. We got a lot of requests for basically the ability to sync the AHM's time clock with a clock on the network. That could mean it's a local computer on your local network that's sort of serving up the time. NTP really, without getting super far into the weeds, basically functions like uh, hey, it's midnight. Hey, just letting you know it's midnight. Hey, it's midnight. It's just like a consistent tick of saying this is what time it is so that the HM's time never drifts. This is particularly helpful if you have really time sensitive projects. So uh, let's say maybe your HM is running the bell schedule at a school and you want to make sure that bell schedule, it can't change. There can't be even over like, this could be minute drift, a few seconds here after like years or something like that. You need it to stay on. So in cases like that, the NTP really comes into play. So we can say, hey, just periodically check with this clock to make sure that my clock is matching your clock. And setting it up is really easy. So let's say that I've got, go over here with configure, go to my unit, and unit time is where we're going to find that at. So I can go to unit time, and we'll see a couple of new options here. So make sure I get that right. It's as simple as just doing edit NTP and time zone, and you'll see I don't have, it's completely not set up at all for me. So I'll go right here and edit NTP and time zone. And the first thing it gives us is a few servers. The servers are really nice. They are legitimate servers. They're perfectly usable, and I would recommend them. So the ntp.org is like a nonprofit organization that sort of just like takes care of this. So this is one, of course, on the internet. If you wanted to change this, you could simply type in the IP address of your local clock, and then it will always sync to it. But I'm good with these. And of course, if you do a clock on the internet, your AHM has to be connected to the internet. So keep that in mind. I'll just set my time zone. I happen to be in America, and I am, oh goodness, this is always fine. Where are you at? Chicago's close enough. Hit OK, boom, now I am, and it's letting me know where my clock is, where the unit is. The system manager time is my computer. The unit is, of course, the HM itself. I will hit, let me just sync really fast. Yes, please, and thank you. Now we're in lockstep, and that's all it takes. So that makes it easy. So I've got that. And again, I almost wish it was more complicated, but if you need NTP, it's like, it's right there. So yay, love that. So then next up, let's go over here. Next slide, EQ ganging. This one is super fun. In fact, I might even actually hide myself. Let's click on this because this is like, I don't even want to distract you from this. So I'm going to go away and I'm going to make you look at this. So EQ ganging. So it is temporarily gang together parametric EQ to make relative, absolute, or mirrored changes. We have a multi-edit window and a quick view window as well. So I'm gonna make this really big and intentionally take up lots of the screen so we can see and enjoy and appreciate this. So EQ ganging, heavens, this is so, this is like what I'm secretly, not so secretly, most jazzed about. So with EQ, one of the things that is enjoyable with AHM is that we can get projects done really quickly. We can come in, make the changes, and we don't have to disrupt the audio. We can really just go for it. And it's nice to not have to think about, oh, well, do I have to compile this, or am I going to disrupt something? Or maybe perhaps more importantly for your project, how can I get this done as fast as possible? And EQ ganging helps us do that. So I'm going to I might even go a little bit backwards here. So let me show you the multi-edit view first. So I can click on any of our parametric EQ windows here, and you'll see that it's, first of all, the screen is quite large and it resizes now, which is just nice. So if you want to have a huge view of your EQ window, you certainly can, and we'll take advantage of that. But now you'll see in the bottom right a new function called multi. So if I click that, it opens up this other window for us. This is the multi-edit view, the multi-edit window. And at first, we're just kind of looking at our primary EQ, where this is the one that we're adjusting. I can come in here and have all the normal changes that I would like. I can still do those. But now I can also add in other EQs that I want to temporarily gang together. So I can make relative or absolute or mirrored changes. So you'll see I can choose any parametric EQ on the zone, on the inputs, on the zones, and for the zones, we have the switchable graphic and parametric EQs. So if you want to drop those in as well, we can. And we have the parametric EQs that exist on each band of speaker crossovers. So really, I can just go grab them from any place. So when might I use this? I'm going to pop my camera up right there for 1 second. Boom. I have so many camera views here. So when might you use this? One opportunity, I usually pick two examples. The first one is perhaps we already have EQ'd a bunch of handheld microphones to the person that's using them. We've done sound check. They all sound good individually. That's great. But now I need to make a change to all of them at the same time. Now, I don't want to disrupt what I've already done for their EQ. Like I've already tailored it to them. So I don't want to have to start over. I don't want to have to go to every single handheld and make the exact same change individually. That can kind of take a long time. Nor do I want to just copy and paste what I'm doing as well. That's not quite getting the job done either. So in comes relative EQ gain. So for this particular one, I'm gonna drop in some PAs, and that's usually my other example here. Is one, we could do it with handhelds, like as an input example. And a zones example might be I'm doing PA zoning, where I have each section of my PA tuned, processed. It's like perfect the way that I've got it. But then once we fire up the entire system, or when everybody starts to sit down, the system starts to sound different, right? Because now there's a bunch of people in the room. I need to make a quick and swift relative or perhaps absolute adjustment to the system without having to go to each zone individually or any of that. Now I can just grab what I need, make the relative change, and it is reflected instantaneously. So not only is this fun, extremely useful, but this is also just darn pretty to look at. So I've got my program zone, and I'm just going to drop in a bunch of zones that I've labeled PA left, A, B, and C, PA right, A, B, and C, front fills, side fills, and 2 delays. So I'm going to drop those in, and now I can kind of see this drop into the grid view. So I'm going to adjust my columns because I can choose how much space or how many columns I actually want to appear in the grid view. So I'll just let's see, 5's pretty good. Let's 4. I could make it, make them really big if I needed to see them really closely. But typically, depending on how many channels you're dropping in, 4, I can see everything here, and I don't need to scroll. I like that. So I'm in here, I can see all the EQ across all of them at the same time. So again, colorful, this is nice to look at. So if I'm in relative mode, that means, and let me take away, I'll keep my camera up for right now. You can still see everything. I can see everything that's happening right now. And if I need to make a relative change, I decide, okay, I've dropped all these channels in. So for the moment, they are all ganged together. Now I can go in and say, okay, no matter what you're doing, now I need to raise this purple band up. And so you'll see some of them are up much higher than others because it's all relative. It depends on what they were set at already. This is in contrast to absolute. If I go to absolute mode and I say, okay, I want this turquoise band, I need you to be at -10, no matter what you were doing. I need you to go be that right now. Then they all snap to be -10. If we'll start shifting these around, you can see again, this is just fun to do. If I start making these adjustments, I'll bring those back. Let's be slightly less extreme here. Maybe I want to adjust the Q right there. Again, all that's done. We'll go back to relative mode. So again, you'll see a low shelf on some of these channels and not others. If I suddenly decide to drop those in, you'll see that some of them are a lot less prominent than others because it's completely relative. It all depends on where they already were. So it's super handy. To make it even faster now, you can either left click on them to just for a second drop them out. okay, make the changes. Thank you. This actually needs to be a notch. And I need this to be 100 hertz wide. Thank you very much. We'll drop that in. Now bring my PA left back in, and then I can make another change. And then maybe I say, well, compared to my program one, I actually need to do something specifically just to my front fills. I can right click on the block, and I'll do it so you guys can see it. There we go. It's above my head. I can do exclude only. I can include only. So exclude only means just bring everybody in except this. Include only means only focus on me. Include all means bring everybody back in. And set as primary means I want this to be like the primary, the reference EQ that we see up in the top section. So if I do include only, so now I'm saying, okay, between program and front fill, this is the only thing that I want to make an adjustment on right now. Or I can quickly set as primary. Now this is what I view up here. Or perhaps I include all, and I'm going to set this back to my primary. Program's going to be back to my primary. I can do that super fast. You may also notice a couple things like undo and redo. So if I want to A/B changes very quickly, I can. That's very handy as well. If you've made an adjustment, perhaps you're using it and you're looking at Smart from Rational Acoustics and you're making some changes. And you just want to see, is the change I made actually good, or did I accidentally make this worse? So A-Bing it is really nice, as well as, again, the ability to just quickly drop in more channels from more parametric EQs across the system. That's quite simple. Or I wanted to, and as we'll kind of talk about more in a second, I can really quickly just punch bands in and out, decide I actually don't need that anymore. And that's a new feature, not just with EQ ganging, but in the parametric EQ updates as a whole. I can go in here and punch specific bands in and out. So if you wanted to do another version of an A/B test to say, okay, well, if I took this out, even if it wasn't the last thing I did, like I might want to do with undo redo, I might just quickly punch it in, punch it out, A/B it, and see if it's doing what I mean it to do. So that's the like multi-edit window. This is the big one. It's gets even fancier though, because we have what we're calling the quick view. So I might be in my bird's eye view, which is already quite powerful as it is. We can do things like right-clicking on the level block to change the level or the mute state, things like that. I can also, hold command and bypass channels in and out quite quickly, handy. But now with parametric EQ and EQ ganging, I can actually right-click on a PEQ block and I get a miniature or a quick view of the EQ block. So now I can make EQ adjustments without even having to open up the larger window. So if you just really quickly need to get in here and say, quick, do this, do that. I didn't mean to do that. Let's do this. This is supposed to be a narrower. There we go. Thank you much. This needs to go up. I can do that without having to open up the window. Step further. Now I can still gang them together. If I hold the command, and you'll see it written right underneath this little preview window right here. If I use command on Mac or control on Windows and right click on other channels, I am now joining them into my gang. And you can see a little white outline goes on top of the block, so you can see that they're in the gang. And I can just go in here and make changes, and you can watch them again, all happen completely live. I don't have to do anything special and say, maybe, yeah, let's add this one in. I don't need these anymore. We'll drop this. Thank you much. Tighten this up a little bit. This needs to turn into a high pass filter. High pass. High pass. There we go. Do that. I can do those. And also, I think it's worth noting, I've mentioned the mirror mode, but I haven't shown you the mirror mode. So let me, I'll make it big so we can make some bigger. We'll go to the multi-edit window so you guys can see it. Let's go to my zones and let's do my side fills and my delays. So let's say I've got something else going on entirely, and I want to be able to say, okay, well, actually, I do want these to be exactly as I have them set, but dynamically, because I don't want it to just be a copy and paste, because we do have copy and paste. But now I can say, all right, well, give me mirrored mode, and it instantly makes every other parametric EQ in this gang mirrored to it. So that means I can also make changes live. I can hear them live while they're happening. I can make these adjustments instead of making the adjustment, hitting copy and paste. I'm doing it dynamically live while we're working on it. So always look for that if you need it. The mirrored is going to be really handy, but I think a lot of people are going to play around with relative the most. It all kind of depends on what project you're working on or what um, your workflow looks like, or maybe perhaps what you're most comfortable with. It'll totally depend. So, okay, EQ ganging. All right, let's go over there. You hide that. All right. Next step. We've already kind of talked about some of these, but just to point them out again, with the EQ, make this a little bit smaller here. With EQ, I've pointed out that we added the shift click, and this is true also in the quick view. You'll see the band in now, but if I hit shift click, I can pop those in and out. Very nice. And just the per band period, but also that we have a Q up to 12 now. So if you were looking to make tighter, narrower adjustments, now the Q is up from 6 all the way to 12. So you can make quite narrow adjustments. Okay, boom, pow, next. So now let's head over to PA processing. So in my zones, I have what is labeled as speaker processing available to me. We can take output bus processing and devote it to processing, basically like do crossovers for large format PA distribution. So if I go here and I have a stereo zone, my program feed is in stereo, just so I could show you something else. But I can click on it. And you'll see right now I have a number of ways as 2, but I can go up to 4. I can open up my zones configuration and decide how many processing outputs I want to dedicate to that. Perhaps I only need a handful of zones. I'm connected to an HM32 right now, so I have up to 32 output buses or output processing outputs that I could play with. And so I could decide where right now I have 26, but maybe I only need, 20 different zones for different things. And then I'm going to dedicate the rest to output processing. So I could do that. Let's say you'll see here it says unused processing outputs available 2. If I make my zones smaller, maybe I only need 22. Now I suddenly have more available to me. I can also see the speaker processing screen as well, and I can decide how many ways of processing I'd like per zone just from this window. So I'll hit OK, and it's going to do that for me. Thank you much. And so now there's my up to 4 ways of processing. So when I'm in here, you might see a couple of new things if you've already hung out. So one is that we have a mono sub option. If you have a stereo zone, it is more than likely that you're going to want your sub to be mono. So now you can click that and it'll go live. And if I go to my outputs limiters, it's where one of the places I can actually patch it out. You'll see that my low band has actually become 1 patch point now. I also like to point out that you still have total access to your full range of a zone in addition to your crossover as well. So back over here. All right, so we have a mono sub, but perhaps I want stereo subs. Who knows what I'm doing? So I've got that. We have all of our normal controls. Like these aren't particularly new. Your head and your tail slopes. You've got all that. What is new is the fact that you can link and unlink processing bands. So I can decide, well, I actually want to move their summation point if I wanted to, or I just simply wanted a little bit more of a gap because the room is a little bit odd or it just needs a little bit of assistance. I can change how that's behaving. Of course, sometimes just like linking them together makes it nice, very easy, but we're certainly not one to say this isn't, we're going to tell you how to do your work. So here you go. Here's another tool in your toolbox. We'll link this back together. And then super big one, and I saw somebody comment on it already. Dario said, yep, we have all pass filters now. Really big one. So I can, per band of speaker processing, I have an all pass filter available. So I can click on this and you'll see I can make all of our normal adjustments. I can choose if it's a first order or a second order. I can change the Q of the filter and its location. I can quickly copy to and copy from, as well as the copy to and copy from of the speaker processing as a whole. So 2 different sections of copy paste. And I can invert it as well if I need to. So I have that per band of speaker processing. For those that don't know why you might need an all pass filter, many systems engineers or anybody who's deploying large format PAs will use them typically to align their speaker cabinets or their drivers more closely without actually adjusting like like if we just used adjusting the it's purely the phase like relationship between the boxes. This is a way to basically kind of like nudge things in a certain direction without affecting anything else about the signal. So it's an incredibly handy tool where we don't have to use actual delay, but we can do like frequency based delay. Okay, I think I've gone on about that enough without hurting myself, so we'll go with that. All right, next up. Boom, IP controller functions. So this has been another one that has been highly requested, as all this is. As many of you know, that's pretty much how we build firmware is you guys ask for stuff and then we build it. So with the IP controller functions, I'll go over here. You'll see I have some stuff already connected. So one, I have my IP1 connected. You'll see, notice here, an identify button. So how this works is when you click identify, especially if you're doing multiple IP controllers at once, or you're needing to double check like which IP controllers in which slot, above and beyond just the name of the unit or the address of the unit, I can click identify, and now it will flash the IP controller full brightness, darkest brightness, once per second for 60 seconds or until you stop clicking on it. So it'll stay lit for 1 minute and flash so that I can say, yes, this programming slot is connected to this IP controller and it's this one sitting on my table. So incredibly handy to really quickly program or to reassign their addresses, do their network configurations, all kinds of stuff. It's just a little, it's like one of those things that's on the surface might seem kind of small, but it's like so handy in the moment when you're trying to program stuff and just get on with the project. So we've got that. Additionally, we have the shift to mute. So I'll open the simulation to show you this, but let's see, we'll do zone level, we'll do shift to mute, and let's do front fills. Yes. So you'll see when I make the main knob a level function, I now have the ability to tell the shift function to be a mute. So as it exists before 1.5, you could do this. It would just take an extra click. So you can click on the rotary and say, okay, please mute this channel. You use a preset to trigger it. Now we had so many people that just wanted to simply click on the rotary and mute whatever we were working on. We have added that. So now I can do shift to mute, and you'll see when I select the shift function, it's overridden by the main rotary one. So it just lets you know like, hey, this isn't actually, you're not doing source selector, it's just doing the shift to mute. So if I click on the shift button now, you'll see we get a little mute button, and that might be a little bit hard to see depending on what size screen you're looking at right now. But to be able to just like quickly mute this, I can also just quickly raise this up and mute the channel. Really nice addition there. I also like tiny thing. I just like having the mute on screen. That's going to let so many people know, especially like non-technical users, that like what they did, like they have interactive system, it is functioning, it is muted, you're good. Boom, boom. Okay, so we've done that. And then a crosspoint mixer function. Okay, so this was like something that I've personally programmed, like, I don't even know how many times. I don't even know how many times I've instructed people on how to do this. But this crosspoint mixer rotary function is really valuable. So how many scenarios do you run into where you're using an IP1, it's just a single rotary, right? And perhaps you've been using a source selector to toggle between sources. That's all well and good. Sometimes you're listening to the Bluetooth receiver, sometimes you're listening to the Blu-ray player, sometimes you're listening to TV receiver number 3 or the Sonos server. Like you're toggling between them. You don't want them all live at the same time. You just want them to purely act as a toggle between them. Well, we had lots of people and lots of projects that wanted to be able to not toggle between different sources, but to keep them all live, but just mix them. So really turn the IP1 into a single rotary mixer. We could do this before. There was some work involved. You use presets to kind of change the function, the actual programming of the IP1 on a whim, which is still really fun. And I do recommend for many projects, that's a great option. But now it's just to say, okay, yeah, I would like this to, let's say maybe it's the zone level of our front fills, for instance, and I'm going to make this, let me deselect shift to mute. I'm going to have this be the cross point input select. That's what it's listed as a function. So then I list which zone I'm actually talking about, and I'm there you go. You'll see the main function is changed now. It's kind of being overridden to say, hey, you've selected this like cross point mixer function now, and I choose which zone I'm mixing for. So let's do the front fills again, and then I provide a min max value for the inputs that I want to give them the option to mix. So for instance, it might be mic 1. Yeah, mic 1's good all the way through the spare microphone. That works. So 1 through 5. So all those channels. And now when I go in through here, not only does it tell me which zone I'm in, it lets me know, hey, like you're still in the front fill, like mixing, or it's ballroom, or it's classroom A, or it's theater, the main theater, all different kinds of zones. But now I can go in here and say, okay, mic 1, you go here, and then I go choose which input I'd like to mix now. You go all the way up, and then I can go to mic 3, bring you up, mic 4, and let's do this spare microphone. Let's bring you up as well. So then I can go through here. It still follows all the colors, all the names, and it's a one knob mixer. So incredibly useful. It was honestly coming up every single week, if not multiple times a week, just for me, just in my inbox, trying to see hey, like people love the IP1. How do we make it into a mixer? Boom. Now we've made it incredibly fast to get that set up and let people mix. And again, the cross points of their inputs into a particular zone. So that one's nice. And two other things, being cognizant of the time here, we've added a disable brightness button. So we had some users who, got a little overzealous on their brightness button pushing. And sometimes, I mean, if you hit it in just the like wrong sequence of things, like you just hit it just wrong, it goes all the way to dark. And for really dark theaters or dark spaces or backs of house or fronts of house, that's magnificent. But sometimes with volunteers or very non-technical users, they accidentally hit that, and then it looked like it's like, oh well, is this still good? Like, can I still use this? And the answer is like, yes, of course you can. So now we've made it disable the brightness button. So if you click that button that changes the brightness on the IP6 and the IP8 no longer work. It'll stay at whatever brightness value we've given it, and we don't have to worry about them hurting themselves anymore. So that'll be a really nice add, as well as the text display. So I've already done a couple of examples here, just as just kind of a way to show things. You'll see by default, when we don't have a function chosen, the default is it's unused, and we have some display text. So I could go in here and say, welcome, and I could go to my next one and say to, and we'll say maybe this is like a restaurant, the tavern. I'll put that in. I can open simulation, and you'll see that I've got it. It now pops up on screen. Or I could go to other buttons and say, okay, now this is going to be text 1. This might be text 2. Whoa, text 2. How I've programmed them so far is I basically treat it as kind of a welcome page on the IP controllers, where I will genuinely say something like, hey, welcome to the tavern, and I'll get rid of these. And I'll have 3 options over here. Let me remove these. Let me really clean slate this for us. So I said, welcome to the tavern. And I may have presets here that will recall a particular preset. Like perhaps I have presets that are labeled, simple mode, advanced mode, and broadcast mode. So depending on who's interacting with the system, they can click on it, and I can let them have that access. So I'll color coordinate the LEDs and say, yep, you're actually going to be, like, let's say we'll do this, boom, simple, and we'll do advanced, and then broadcast. And then I might make these be the actual preset recall. Preset 1, preset 2, preset recall number 3. And I might make them have the other LEDs will be fine. And In fact, in these little welcome ones, I will actually, let's go store these really fast. Simple, advanced, and you'll see them. Advanced, broadcast. There we go. And I'll go in here and I'll make the LEDs be static. Static LED. That'll be red. This one's change it to a static LED. We'll make this purple, and we'll make this be the static LED turquoise. So when they walk up to it, they say, welcome to the tavern. They can choose which kind of event they're running. They know, like, I need to push the red button, and they can push that. And it actually triggers a change, not only for how the system is set up, but also just straight up how this IP controller looks and functions, and can be quite handy. Or if you just want to quickly label something, having that display text will come really in handy, especially when trying to communicate with less technical end users. So, okay, whew. All right, got that. And let's talk a little bit about some of these assorted system manager editions. So I'll make this smaller here. As I'm over here, we added a few things. So one is user permissions. The user permissions are also a not insignificant addition here. And I may hide my face here, but I think we'll be okay. So previously, before 1.5, user permission profiles, really user profiles, were built for and used by custom control. You built them inside of here, and it allowed custom control users to access specific layouts that were built just for them. That is great. We expect people will continue to do that. This new feature also gives us the option to say, okay, well, now I want to let this user log into System Manager, but I want to limit what they're actually able to change. So think like guest engineers or clients that have IT departments that look after the AV systems. Maybe you're done with the project and you want to hand them the keys, so to speak. You're done with it. And you want to say, all right, I'll let you log in, but there are certain aspects that I'm going to intentionally lock out. As an example, so I have a user named Samantha, and I can go and click set permissions. Now I can choose what they do have access to. By default, they don't have access to anything. So I can go in here and decide, yeah, I will let you have access to input processing. You don't get to touch any of the zone processing. You certainly don't get to touch any of the IO or any of the room configuration, but we'll let you do room control. We'll let you combine and divide rooms. That sounds fine. And we'll let you recall presets, not modify presets, but we'll let you recall it. And I can hit OK, and now it actually lists the permissions down here for me. So again, this is excellent, not only for custom control now, but if you want to give people access into System Manager, which, as we know, is like, we're inside of the engine live, we're looking at things, we can see stuff, we're looking at it. I want to give them access to some of it, but not all of it. Now we can do that with user permissions on our profiles. All right, in addition to that, the firmware save and restore. If you are moving from 1.43 or in the future after you're moving from 1.5 to another firmware, now you have the option to, by default, actually, the firmware, the config will be saved and restored by default. So I'm going to just go ahead and disconnect from this, and I'll show you what it looks like. So if I do unit firmware updater, and I choose my HM32, and I'll just hit update, it's going to ask me, hey, we see that you have a config on here. Would you like us to automatically save it and then restore it after the firmware is already updated? This is a huge, huge feature because we had some people, we had some warnings on screen, but sometimes people get so excited that they don't read every word, and that's okay. We had some people who would accidentally wipe their firmware, and we wanted to try to prevent that from happening anymore. So now this pops up. So it says, hey, this is your unit firmware, and this is what it's going to be, and you'll see that it's checked by default. We'll restore the config after updating. So we snuck it into 1.43. So if you're moving from 1.43 into 1.5, you'll see this. Otherwise, if you're moving from any firmware older than that into 1.5, make sure you still save your config and then update the firmware, then restore it But here moving forward from 1.43 moving forward, now we have this option. It's just, hey, we'll save it and we'll restore it for you automatically. So there's little to no chance that that you hurt yourself with it. So that's a really nice addition as well. I'll hit cancel. Don't really want to update that right now. Thank you. And as well as control network bridge persistence. So if you, like me, are a fan of control network bridging, you have that option in your IO card slot. So right now I have a Dante card. So under configure IO port, you'll see I have my Dante card. And I have the internal network bridge on. What that does is it takes the control network port on the back of the AHM and merges it or bridges it with the card. So if you wanted to have one cable coming out of your AHM that has not only Dante audio and control, but also the AHM control, I can do that. If you want them separate, of course, just keep it separate. Just keep it off, and you'll be completely fine. But now, when you update the firmware, previously when you updated the firmware, it disabled the internal network bridge. And so you could still update the firmware, you were still totally fine, but you needed to just go back in and turn it on. And so to eliminate that step and make it even simpler for us, we decided, let's go ahead and make it persistent between firmware updates. So, and just as a reminder, like if you update from 1/4 any firmware before 1.5, the bridge persistence isn't turned on. It's starting at 1.5. So now from 1.5 moving forward, the network bridge will be persistent. So, all right, we've got that. Also, zones as input sources. We had some requests for the ability to basically process and sum together channels and be able to make them as their own additional input. So we added that. So I can go down here and I'm just going to go to my input block. Right now it's my 8th signal generator that's running some pink. And I hit this and you'll see now zone outputs is something I can click on. So I can go in here and it'll let me pick any of my zones that I want to send here. So I can, for instance, send it to maybe zone 21. So now I'm getting fed from zone 21. It's coming back into input 16. So if I wanted to have processed, summed together channels, think of like the output of my AMM. I might have all of my inputs being, they're having their mics mixed automatically with the AMM. And then I want to be able to use that as a feed someplace else, not just an output, but I want to be able to, maybe toggle between it for a source selector on a zone, or perhaps I want to process it so I can send it to a camera for broadcast. I have a specific job for it. It needs special processing as a sum together. I don't need to fuss with 6 separate channels. Just let's sum them together. I'll make them as another input, and then I can process them separately and send them on their way. This is going to be a really fun one. I have my own plans of seeing what we can do with this and how far I can push it and get weird with it, because I like doing that. But I'm really excited to see how people start to like manipulate the system, taking channels that are summed and processing them again, or simply being able to process them and send them to all these different locations for all the different projects. Like I think about a house of worship, particularly in the West, and especially like North America, but also Australia and places like that, where there's like a huge house of worship culture, where they have so much going on under one roof, where they've flown a PA, they're doing that, plus they have classrooms and conferencing, plus they have broadcast. And the AHM is just like getting closer and closer to being able to do that entire job with integrity and with sound quality in mind, and do so really quickly and at an affordable price. So we're just going more into that. I think you'll see as we continue to develop firmware, I think it's becoming quite obvious what's important to us, and that is workflow, user capabilities, function, but keeping things actually fast to set up. It's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine that some products, like just globally, it's super common to say like, oh, we're so fast to set up, it's so quick. But at a certain degree, they add so many functions, or they give you so many options that it is no longer a fast to set up. And we're trying to stay in this lane of like, we can do things well and keep them quick. And so whether it's the quick view or the EQ ganging to get things done quickly, or it's zones as input sources to be able to manipulate sums of channels in addition to all the zone bus processing, great, we can do that. If it's to help you get your controls done more quickly, superb, we'll do that as well. I think we're headed in a really great direction. It's really exciting. This is 1.5 is a big step for us, and I hope that you all enjoy it as much as I've been enjoying it and we've been enjoying building it. So, alrighty. I believe I've got one more slide here. Yep, I do. Q&A time. Haven't looked at the chat in a little bit, so let me hop over there. Okay. Somebody from Peru. Hello. All right, let me scroll through here. Gotta love R&D. You're darn right. We posted the link, so we're good there. Somebody said you have to add all pass holders. Well, we did. We got you. Greetings. Hello. Oh, got something from the UAE. Hi, Joseph. Alrighty. I will give it a minute. Let us all really kind of soak this in. I'll let this fun background video play, and I'll wait to see if anybody has any specific questions. Hopefully, I just talked just so long that everything is obvious and nothing requires explanation. But I always hang out for a few minutes here. John says, me yesterday, thought I hit that button and wiped the unit. Thankfully, small install. Yep, yeah, we always got to be careful with that. That seems to be like a common thing that we see. Not like just with us or just like in the industry in a total is like, oh yeah, if we update the firmware, that can be scary sometimes. But now, not only like our new firmware, especially with AHM, like I'm always like, yeah, like let's launch it today. Like it's out today, great. Like let's launch it. Let's put it on the system. But now it's like even a step further of like, okay, not only is the quality of the build because we do so much testing or such an extensive process for firmware testing before we launch it. Plus now we've made it even easier to update the firmware. It's like, okay, great. Now there's no reason to not just go click update, go for it. So excited for the future updates as well. Now that it'll just be boom, boom. Okay, got a question here. Let me read it real fast. Is there a way to insert signal generator anywhere in the signal path? Yes, you can. It's not anywhere, but you can. It's basically available as an input source, and that's really what you're seeing me use right now. Is 8 signal generators. So under the configure unit, you'll see that we've got signal generators, and you've got 8 of them that you can program. I have them all set to pink noise, but you can also do bandpass, white noise, sine waves, things like that. So I could do that. Then in the channels, whether it be here on any of the input blocks, or I go to assign inputs and then go to SigGen, I can drop those in there. I could do it there. Or let me just hop over here for simplicity's sake. I can drop them in, but they basically need to be treated like as an input, and then I can take those inputs anywhere. So sometimes I'll just drop noise on there or a signal just so I can like watch the signal path go, whether I'm watching on the front panel of my AHM 16 or 32 on the meters page, or I'm in here to just make sure like my signal path is good all the way through outside of the AHM, through the amplifiers into the speakers. I'll drop those in. So it's sort of like, yes, with an asterisk, like, yeah, I could drop a signal generator anywhere, but it's not like I take a signal generator and put it like after the compressor. If I wanted to specifically see what the compressor was doing, like I could just quickly bypass this other stuff and just be viewing it from the compressor side, if that makes sense. So, okay. Okay. It says without breaking your original path. I mean, yeah, it's not going to break your path. If I change this from SigGen 1 to local input 2, nothing about my signal path changes. It stays all exactly the same. I'm just changing where it's being sourced from. So I can decide, actually, yep, go back to SigGen 1, thanks, and everything, this will remain exactly the same. So if your like scenario is, oh, I'm trying to troubleshoot something, I can say, yeah, instead of having somebody sit there and tap with a microphone, because that's inconsistent and hard to do and involves a second person. I can just go in here, drop the SIGGEN in, and everything else remains exactly intact. And I can find the exact problem, but now with a consistent signal, if that's what you were trying to do. Yeah, absolutely. And then I could just go back to, okay, back to local input 2, local microphone, thank you. Okay, I saw another question come in. Let me go read that. Outside question on linking S-Link to an SQ. What's best practice on pulling channels from AHM to control on the SQ and push outputs from SQ to AHM, i.e. AHM on and install in bigger mixer for a larger set of tie lines or other choice? Okay, so the first question I always ask in regarding this like topic is who's on the most? Typically it's the AHM because it's doing the distribution of the system processing. So that will typically, I'll have that be the hub, but like, let's use your exact example of you need to push, I'm going to just make some executive decisions here. There's some local handhelds that are plugged into the AHM that now when the console is active, I want it to receive the microphones. So it can process it, and then it'll still, maybe it sends it back directly to the AHM, or maybe they mix it and then send the bus back. So here's the difference. So you would use tie lines if you wanted socket to socket patching. In the case of getting local handhelds on the AHM to the SQ, I'd use tie lines. To just say, hey, right after conversion, right after the preamp where it converts from analog to digital, right then, that's where it plucks for the tie line. That's the socket. I want it to go from there and just send them directly over. So in this exact example I'm giving you, I'd say tie lines, please, from my local inputs to my my IO port. Maybe it's an S-Link card, or if I was on my 64, it'd be my local S-Link perhaps. I can have that and just immediately send, and you can see I've got 1-to-1 of the first 12. Take my tie lines from my local inputs and send them directly onto my Dante card is what's happening right now. But it could be, again, to your SQ. Then I go on the SQ and I tell it, hey, go grab the first 12 inputs on your card because that's where you're going to find those local inputs. That's where they're hiding at. So that's how I would do that. As far as like getting them back over to the AHM, it would depend on if you wanted them processed, like you wanted the SQ to process it and then send them back and let the AHM still have individual control of them. Or if you wanted to just send like the like aux outs or the bus outputs of the SQ over, it would depend. But yeah, the other option, so you said like Thailand's or other choice, what the other choice would be input direct outs. Personally, I've only used input direct outs in a couple of scenarios where I wanted some processing, right? Because that's the biggest difference between tie lines and input direct outs. If it's input direct outs, there is some processing involved. If it's tie lines, it is socket to socket. It is basically being ignored by the HM. The HM may or may not be processing at all. It's completely moot. And so I'm just going to use tie lines for socket to socket, and I'll use input direct out to take some of the processing and send it elsewhere. Which section of the processing, you might be asking? Great. That's a good question. So you go to channels, input direct outs. You'll see a copy of all of your channels here and their levels. It's individual level control here. And then I can choose my global pick point. So I can decide if it's post gate, you'll see I have post preamp, post gate, post the insert A return, post the parametric, post the compressor, post the insert B return, or post delay. And I can send those, and you'll see I also have options to control all control groups or channel faders and mutes, or just individually, just the faders, just the mutes, etc. I can choose to do that. So do you want processing associated with it? Do you not? That's what kind of decides that. I'll do input direct outs if I want to retain preamp control on the AHM, because when you use tie lines, I mean, unless you're using Dante or another like layer 3 protocol, like the nearest engine is who has preamp control. So sometimes I'll intentionally keep them in the AHM, and I'll send the direct outs for things like stream or camera feeds to those devices. So I still have total control in AHM, but I'm giving them a really specific section of my inputs here. So, and I see you commented back. Send back from the SQ a complete mix with all the inputs and then send to the existing. It's okay. Yeah. So I would, if I were you in this exact scenario, you could, it would depend on what you feel like doing, input direct outs or tie lines. Again, personal choice here. I would probably do tie lines, unless there were like some very specific things I wanted. I'll do tie lines from local inputs over to my SQ. That will be the IO port. Then from the SQ, I say, okay, grab the first, in this example, 12 inputs on the SQ's card, the S-Link port or the Dante card or whatever. Grab those first 12, process them, and now I have my main left-right out from my SQ. Superb. Then I'm going to be patching it. It's coming out of the SQ back into the HM. So then it's an input into the HM. It's coming out of SQ into the HM. Input channels, then I'll take that from probably the same port that I sent it over on. So I'm sending channels out over on that card over to the SQ. Then when the SQ is done, it's sending them back over to me as inputs. And I can say, all right, please grab those channels. And you see I've got many of them. Go grab them. And now you're going to be inputs. So now I'm getting an SQ feed. So it'll probably be this. We'll go over here and I'll make a channel that just says SQ feed. And, ooh, actually, no, I lied. We'll do 13 SQ feed because I'm going to make it stereo here. Configure, input stereos, 13, 14, boom, boom, 13, 14, SQ feed. Now it's going to say, instead of you pulling from there, SQ feed, boom, are going to grab channels 1 and 2 from the card slot. And then they can continue to go out. It might be going, I've got my SQ feed, and maybe I'll set this to Unity. Now I'm going to send it out of my program material, or maybe I'll just send it directly out to my PA and my front fills and sides and delays. Or alternatively, this is how I typically do it. I'll send it to my program zone. I have a zone very specifically set for my program. And then in my zones, I'll feed all of these other zones with the initial one. So I'll say, you don't get inputs, you just get another zone. You're being fed with program. You're being fed with the program. Thank you much. Set to Unity. Boop, boop. I'm using the arrow keys to go between channels to do this, by the way. None for you. Program. Okay. I can right click, set it to Unity. None for you. You are also getting program. Right click the Unity. And see, like, I'm just doing this, like, you know, live, as it were. So while audio's pumping, I can make all these changes. Hello. Misclick. There we go. Set to Unity. Front fills, you're also getting program material. Set to Unity. So on and so forth. I won't make us do all those, but just see they're all getting fed with program. So then SQ is going into program. It's getting fed over here. And I'm feeding that to the rest of my PA for processing or all this other stuff. So that's how I specifically would do it with your example, John. Okay. Dan says, does ANH offer an AHM expansion card option with AES IO? So if you wanted to, you could always use the DX012, which has AES outputs on it, if you wanted to do that. If you're on the AHM64, it's got the native S-Link port. You can just plug it into there. It'd be fine, just like any other DX box. Or if you can put an S-Link card in the AHM16 or 32 and have AES that way. If you want to get AES inputs for now, at least, you'll have to do it with the DX32 box. So Noel says, I work in sports venues. Fiber solution for tying together AHM units without having extra switches, single mode fiber card for the option slot. Yes. So that depends if you're doing audio or control or both. But the fiber, I mean, luckily, fiber follows the same like rules as Ethernet, and so long as like we've had people use media converters basically to go from Ethernet over to fiber optic cable, that's totally fine. Make sure that you read our white paper on putting our protocols onto the network, so to speak. To make sure that we're following that. But it's like, yeah, you don't need a fiber card. really you can just use a media converter so long as it's following, like, depending on which protocol it is, let's assume it's gig A, so it's gigabit, so it has to be just a gig. The media converter has to be able to do gigabit conversion, but otherwise you should be good. So if it's control, I mean, it's like even less thinking about that. You can, because it's control, it's just like it'll take up whatever bandwidth you give it. So, but audio, we have to be a little bit more specific with our protocols. Of course, if it's like, again, layer 3 or any of our control stuff, you can really just kind of throw it on there. So, but yeah, media converters, we have lots of people do that, especially in sports venues because the physical distance is so long. All right, I've already been talking for an hour, so I'm going to close it up. If you guys are ever curious, you want to get a CTS credit for AHM certification, or you just are desperate to hang out with me again, we do these live virtual AHM certification classes. You can sign up on the Allen Heath website under the community and learning tabs. You'll see all of our upcoming ones. We've got AHM certification, more certification classes to come, plus advanced certifications if you're interested. Come hang out, check out version 1.5. Learn a bunch and get a chance to ask questions, ask about projects, dive deeper into some projects or topics as well. So, all right. Thank you all. I really appreciate everybody joining, hanging out, and asking some good questions. Always a good time. But thank you. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.